Hi, everyone. I'm Nirpam from Bluewater Photo and Travel. This is our Diving in Cuba Travel Talks. So we are live on Facebook and also on Zoom, where we have some guests who are going to be joining us today for the talk. If you guys have any questions on the Facebook side, make sure you drop them in the comments and we'll respond there. Otherwise, in the chat box in Zoom, and that would be awesome. With that, I will let the Travel Talks group get to it.
Great. Thanks, Nirupam. Hi, everyone. My name is Tim, and I am the general manager over at Bluewater Travel. And thank you all for joining. We have a great panel with us today. Firstly, we have Kelly Brock, who is with the Avalon Fleet. She is expert in Cuba, everything Cuba. We have Shane and Ramona. Shane is our expert videographer and Ramona is our expert photographer, who will be leading the workshop that we have later on this year. And we also have Jill, who is our group expert. Jill has some technical difficulties with her video, so she's Bluewater Travel for, for today. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. I have a quick summary of our talk today. I'm just going to go over a few slides, and then I'm going to hand it off to Kelly, who will go more in depth about diving in Cuba and the liveaboards in Cuba. She will then hand it over to Jill, who will go over our workshop real quick. And Shane and Ramona will then talk about how the workshop will go and what they're going to teach, some photo skills and video skills. And at the end, we will have a Q&A. So I invite you guys to ask as many questions as you want via the chat box. Or if there's something that you want to ask right away, you can do a reaction at the bottom and raise your hand and we'll get to it right away. Or you can save your questions for the Q&A at the end. So I am now going to share my screen. Okay. All right. Awesome. So, all right, great. So again, welcome to our Travel Talk series. Today's Travel Talk is on Cuba. Cuba has some of the best reefs and dives in the Caribbean. There's one very unique thing about Cuba is the chance to see saltwater crocodiles. The reefs itself, I believe, are one of the healthiest in the whole of the Caribbean reef system. And not just the diving, but Cuba is also very unique in the sense that Havana is literally lost in time. It's such a cool and fun city to visit when you go there to dive. Cuba is just barely 90 miles south of Florida, and it's the largest island in the Caribbean. So the climate is very similar to South Florida. It is tropical and warm throughout the year. Again, the reefs are literally some of the best in the Caribbean. And Kelly would touch more into this, but not many divers dive in Cuba compared to the rest of the Caribbean. So if you've been to many destinations of the Caribbean, which I'm sure a lot of you have, Cuba is a great alternative, great place to go to. Cuba does have multiple dive sites, dive areas. Some are closer to Havana, some are slightly further away. The best is in this area, slightly to the southeast, called the Jardines de la Reina, or the Garden of the Queens. And this is where we are going to be focused most of our presentation on, and our workshop will also be in this area. So in the southeast of Cuba. Some of the marine life that we'll see in Cuba includes sharks. Caribbean sharks, nurse sharks, black tips. There is a chance for hammerheads and bull sharks as well. One very unique thing to see in Cuba is saltwater crocodiles, and you can get in the water with them, and you can get amazing photos and videos of them, which is one of the few places in the world that you can do that. And as you can see, depending on the timing, the water is really, really clear. So the pictures and videos can be really, really great. There are turtles, green turtles, hawksbill, loggerhead turtles, spotted eagle rays, stingrays. There's a chance to see mantas, Goliath grouper, tarpon, snappers, barracudas, jacks. There's also a lot to see topside. There's a very unique creature which Kelly will touch on. We do have a picture here. It's called a hutia. It's really, really cute. And I'm sure Kelly will show you a picture later on.
If you want to do it, then you got to get that thing to work.
A little bit about Havana. Havana, as you know, has a really fascinating history, especially with the US. The food is amazing in Cuba. The music, the people, the dancing, the culture is very unique and very fun. And I would say Havana is a must-visit place. It's just such a fun, vibrant community. The rum and the cigars are also something to explore if you're there. Most of the diving in Cuba, especially at the Garden of the Queens, are going to be liveaboard only. It's a little bit different in Cuba, where the liveaboard is more like a floating hotel. And I'll let Kelly touch more into that later. The liveaboards are all really, really nice, really big, and really spacious. So that's why I say it's more like a floating hotel. Getting there is actually pretty easy. This data here is a little bit outdated because there are no more cruise ships that go to Cuba anymore. Oops. Oh, what happened? Okay. There are no more cruise ships that go to Cuba, but there are still multiple direct flights from the US that go to Cuba. So it's actually not that difficult from Fort Lauderdale, from Miami, from Houston, to go straight into Havana and a couple of other cities in Cuba itself. And the last thing I want to touch on is we do have an underwater photo and video workshop in October this year, which is going to be led by Shane and Ramona. It's 7 nights aboard the liveaboard, one of the liveaboards, 3 dives a day. There's going to be free daily photo and video workshops. So whether you're, you shoot with the TG6 or with a SLR or with a GoPro, or everyone's welcome to join. Even if you're not a photographer or videographer, you're welcome to join as well, and you can enjoy all the amazing photos and videos that everyone has to share with you during that week. So with that, I am going to hand it off to Kelly to start her presentation. Kelly?
All right, you need to stop sharing your screen if you don't mind. And then,
Oops, sorry.
that's okay.
There you go.
Cancel, and then I will jump on over to mine. All right. Just want to confirm, can everybody see my screen okay here? Is that right? All right. Okay, hi everybody. Thank you for being here. I definitely know that Cuba is unique, and no matter what, it always comes with a heap of questions and curiosity. So I'm excited you guys are here, and I know Bluewater is going to do an amazing job, hosting this trip this coming fall, with plenty more to follow thereafter. But just taking a step back to give everybody a brief introduction on who Avalon actually is. Avalon, in partnership with our conservation kind of company, if you will, Blue Sanctuary, really has been working together since 1992. So we've been doing this for quite a long time in Cuba specifically. We not only offer programs for scuba diving and snorkeling, but believe it or not, we actually do fly fishing programs and eco touring. All of those programs basically contribute to the overall conservation program that is happening, that Avalon basically is founded on. To take my screen work here for a minute, there we go. Just how it came to be, Cuban government back in '96 decided that they wanted to protect the really pristine areas around Cuba. And ironically enough, for a lot of things that Cuba does do, they really take pride in their natural resources around the island. And they were more interested in protecting it for long term, not just a quick, let's say it's protected and then not actually follow through. So I think it's a neat statistic that's pretty powerful, or percentage, is that actually 25% of Cuba's coastline is marine protected area. And 25% doesn't sound too crazy until you realize that Cuba is actually almost the same size as Florida. So it's a very big island, and that's a lot of protected area. Then additionally, Avalon exclusively manages 92% of that protected area. So that means that if you're diving in the Gardens of the Queen or any other of the protected marine parks around Cuba, you are doing it through an Avalon program, regardless of how it's facilitated. And that has to do, again, it all goes back to the conservation program that's really happening behind the scenes. I like to think of what you're going to take part in is a liveaboard that is really the other layer on top of a conservation program that exists, that you don't have to necessarily even understand all the details to still be a big part of it. As Tim mentioned, we actually have a fleet of 6 luxury yachts. I think they are all fabulous. They all offer really equivalent amenities across, though each of them are just a little bit different. They're all going to have private ensuite bathrooms, hot tubs. One of the boats even has 2 hot tubs. The food is going to be incredible. They have sun decks and a bar for the mojitos, obviously, after your dive day is done. Really nice, spacious lounges for the Bluewater in general. It's a perfect setup because they'll be able to host workshops in these salons with the big screen TVs, so that people can either show their photos or talk through how to do things differently. But just another angle. Again, all the cabins, depending on which boat you're on, can be a little bit different. These are images specifically from the JA3, we call it, but the fleet all kind of has different names. Typically, they're all Hardinas Avalon 2, Hardinas Avalon 3, et cetera, et cetera. These are just some snippets from the JA3, but like I said, all the cabins are really, I would consider, equivalent in amenities and comfort, with bathrooms and bedding options, et cetera. One thing, as Tim kind of touched on, is it is all liveaboard diving out, definitely in the Gardens of the Queen. And again, some liveaboards you think of, you would be more sailing. So you'll like be at a mooring for a day or two, and then you'll pick up mooring and move, and then you'll pick up mooring and move, and so on. In the Gardens of the Queen, it doesn't exactly work like that. And again, it's kind of all goes back to the fundamental reasons of not moving around, trying to lessen our footprint. But all your diving is going to be done from a skiff, and never from the mothership. You'll not do any of your activities, if you will, through the mothership. You'll always get on a skiff to do so. And when I say skiff, I mean like the skiff pictured here, not a Zodiac. This is not like Zodiac diving. The skiffs hold between 10 to 12 divers max. So regardless of how many of your closest friends are on the boat with you on the mothership, you're only going to be diving with 10 to 12 of them max ever. And we will always have at least one dive guide per every 6 divers. So it's very easy to break groups into small dive groups and break them apart accordingly as needed for who's doing what and, you know, different level experience, etc. Dive briefings before every dive. One thing to just mention, the diving in the gardens is suitable for all levels. We take full boats of just snorkelers. We take full boats of people that are just there to do eco touring and enjoy the other wildlife and beach exploring and things like that. But the diving is definitely by no means like needed advanced or anything like that. It's quite basic, simple beginner diving. Keep using the wrong thing here to make, sorry, get a little happy here with the screen. I do have a picture of the cute Hutias. That is the Hutia up in the top picture there, and they are adorable. And you will have the opportunity, as you please, to, you know, we can take you up on the beach and you can actually feed the Hutias fruit and give them fresh water. The other thing also on the beaches is iguanas and hermit crabs and quite a really significant bird population as well. The skiffs, the cool thing about the skiffs is that they're also like, you know, shallow bottom boats. So you can kind of tour through the mangroves on the skiffs, like coming and going from your dives and stuff, which I just think is so spectacular. There's something really special to me, always has been, about the mangroves. And especially out in the Gardens of the Queen, they play an extremely fundamental role in why the Gardens of the Queen is what it is. Just to give you a breakdown of what you can expect for our program in general, and this will be the same for the trip they're doing in October with Bluewater, is Saturdays is basically your day to get to the boat. I do want to take a minute to note while this map is up, you'll see that Havana is up at the top right, and way down east is Hookeroo Port, made by the Red Star, and then out to Gardens of the Queen. Havana is a solid 6.5 to 7 hour bus ride to Hookeroo Port. I'm not going to sugarcoat a 7-hour bus ride, but I am going to tell you that generally speaking, I wouldn't say that it's that much different than a 6-7 hour plane ride. Most of the time, these collective transfers that we're taking people from Havana to Hookeroo are going to be on like big air-conditioned buses with bathrooms on them. But of course, you'll stop throughout the trip to, you know, take potty breaks and grab a snack or whatever. You'll also notice, I think if I use my mouse here, Camagüey over here to the farther east, a little more southeast, and then also up here is Santa Clara. Those are 2 other airports that, including Havana, all 3 of those cities have daily direct flights, nonstop flights from the US to there and back again. So it's really easy. If you want to see Havana and you want to make that part of this trip, you can definitely fly into Havana a few days on the front end of the trip is what I suggest. But if you're tight on vacation time, tighter on the budget, need to do Havana a different time, I suggest flying in to Camagüey either the day before, just to give yourself a little more grace in case airlines go crazy, or you can fly in the morning of early into Camagüey. So just a little note on that, because sometimes traveling there, people are always wondering how to get there and what does that look like. But once you're actually there, we will pick you up from one of those 3 cities Saturday morning and take you to port. And normally boarding is going to be between 2 and 3 in the afternoon. Once everybody's up on board, ideally, condition depending, you will take off to head out to the Gardens of the Queen that evening. And then you'll be overnighting in the Gardens of the Queen Saturday night, and Sunday morning the adventures begin. just like on most dive weeks, when you're on a liveaboard, you're going to do 2 dives in the morning before lunch, and 2 dives again are typically offered after lunch. There are night dives offered throughout the week as well, and the schedule will be dependent on the group, the group arrangements. But that on those days, typically you will skip dive 4 of the day, and you will then do a night dive in its place. So it'll be like dive 1, 2, lunch, dive 3, take a longer break, and then do a night dive on those, times during the week when a night dive is offered. On Friday, you will do 2 morning dives, and then the crew kind of helps everybody get their gear broken down and washed and hung out to dry. And the beautiful part is it dries like that while you're heading back into port Friday afternoon. So between the wind and the sun, your gear is nice and dry, and by Friday evening, you can pack it up easily. And you overnight in port on the mothership, and then Saturday morning, everybody disembarks pretty early to make their flights typically out of Camagüey. I would say the main thing people like to do is depart out of Camagüey, regardless of what they do on the front end. The Camagüey departure flight tends to work really well for most people's schedule, and does allow for most people to get all the way back to wherever they need to be in a nice one-day realm. So for example, I'm on West Coast. I could easily leave Camagüey in the morning and I'm back home in my bed by Saturday night. It is a long day. I'm not going to sugarcoat that either, but it's doable. I think at that point, I'm going to hold on that, and I'm going to pass it on to Jill so that she can, Jill with Bluewater, so she can talk a little bit more about the Bluewater dive trip itself. And then I'm available thereafter to talk about some other questions as they come up. And so I'm going to stop share and pass it on to Jill.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay, so I just wanted to run through the Bluewater workshop that we're holding in October this year. This is the first time we've held a workshop in Cuba for quite a few years. So it's something we're really excited about doing, and it's a really unique opportunity to get over to Cuba and do some diving there. As Kelly already said, there's a limit on the number of divers that can visit Cuba each year. So we feel really lucky that we've managed to get some spots on the boat and get the opportunity to dive. The workshop that we're running is going to be held in October. The dates are 14th to the 21st of October 2023, and that's a Saturday to a Saturday. As we've already said, the workshop will be led by Ramona and Shane. So Ramona is going to be running underwater photography workshops, and Shane will be running underwater videography workshops, and they'll be run throughout the week. They're going to discuss those workshops with you all in a minute or two. So the workshops that we run are free of charge. They're included as part of the price of the trip. We don't charge extra for them. They're by no means mandatory either, so you can join them or not as you wish. But almost every guest that joins our photography and videography workshops, whether they come with a camera or not, really enjoys them, learns a lot from them, and comes away from them with more of an interest in underwater photography and underwater video work. So even if you're not a photographer or a videographer, you can still benefit from the trip and really enjoy being on one of these trips.
What are you doing?
Well, I was listening to a presentation about an October.
So I do have one question from somebody in the group. So they were wondering, are there any hazards in traveling to Cuba, and kind of what is the stigma behind, traveling to Cuba? And I think that's particularly, for Americans.
Jill, do you want me to answer? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. It's actually a wonderful question, and you hit the nail on the head. It has a stigma about it, but the irony is, rest assured, when you go, you will feel no fear. You will not be intimidated at all. The Cuban people are so happy to have us there. And the bottom line is there are no hazards. Cuba is actually rated one of the safest countries to visit for single female travelers. it is one of it. There's practically no crime on the island. That doesn't mean be silly and walk around with like money falling off of yourself. I mean, there's bad humans out there, but in general, Cuba is extremely safe. And as far as getting to Cuba and how we do it legally, it's actually really more just making sure that we do it for the legal reasons that the US allows for Americans to go to Cuba. We just want to make sure that when we go, we're spending our money appropriately and giving it more to the Cuban people and not to the Cuban government. We are not here to support the Cuban government. We are supporting the Cuba's assets, or their you know, the marine park area. We're not helping the Cuban government. We are helping the Cuban people. And I'll leave it at that for a minute, but I can elaborate more, as needed.
Thanks, Kelly. So just to cover just quickly then to cover a little bit more about our workshop in October and what we're offering. So the trip includes 7 nights accommodation on one of the Jardins Avalon boats. It's all inclusive, so it includes all your meals and snacks throughout the day. You will have up to 4 dives per day, and the free photography workshops. There's also obviously when you're diving, your tanks, your weights, that sort of thing will be included with the dive as well. There are a few things that are not included. For example, there is a port fee, a conservation fee. There may be a fuel surcharge as well for this trip, but these things are all listed on our website. You can see the inclusions and the exclusions on our website as part of the trip information. There's also information on the website about the flights and how to travel. Kelly's covered it in quite a lot of detail, and we've also got it written down for you if you want any further information about how to get to Cuba and what we recommend as the best route. Of course, we're here to help you plan this trip if you're interested in joining. So if you want any information at all about how to get there, how to join the trip, then please feel free to ask at any time. One thing I'd like to bring up as well is that we're offering 2 extra nights in Cuba at the start of the workshop. So it's an extension that we would really advise you to take advantage of if you have the time. 2 extra nights in Havana at the start of the trip, which is a cultural tour. So it's giving you an experience of Cuban culture. You can see what's involved in the itinerary on our website as well. So it's a Thursday afternoon arrival, all day Friday in Havana, and then Saturday you're transferred to the boat to start the workshop. And it's a lovely extension to do if you've got some interest in seeing some of the cultural side of Cuba. I think that covers everything from our photo workshop. I don't know if there are any questions specifically about that, but if you would like to join or you would like more information, I think Nirupam has put the details in the chat about how to get where the website is and about how to get in touch with us to book that. So the email address is trips@bluewaterdivetravel.com, and that's the best email to contact us if you would like more information about our workshop. Are there any questions on that side of things? Okay. So Kelly, shall I hand back to you to cover a bit more, or was there anything else you wanted to cover, or shall I pass over to Shane and Ramona now to cover what you want to do on the workshop?
Yeah, I'd say let's go ahead and pass it on to them for the moment to make sure that people know what they're going to get with that part. And then I'm happy to answer more of the Cuba specific questions, which I'm sure are out there afterwards.
All right, well, thanks. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Ramona, and this is my husband, Shane, and we are going to be leading the photo video workshops. And as Tim and everyone has mentioned, I will be leading the photography workshops. And I just wanted to take a brief moment to kind of give you an idea of like how we would like to run the workshops and the topics that we'll cover. I realize that a lot of people that go on these trips will be at different levels, whether you're advanced photographer or just beginning or possibly just curious about it. But I'm going to be going over the basics. I'll talk about, cameras, housings, camera types, basic camera care, how light behaves in an underwater environment. We'll cover lighting, ambient light versus shooting with artificial lighting, and strobe positioning, general camera settings, composition, photo editing with Lightroom. And we'll also be doing an image review. We'll start the image review like a couple days after everyone gets settled into their groove. And that's like it's a very, very fun process and a great learning opportunity to improve your photos with positive reinforcement. And after I'm done with my presentations, then Shane will follow with the video. And apart from the workshops throughout the day, we'll make ourselves available to you for one-on-one if you have any additional questions. And even when we're out in the water, depending on how many people join us on the trip, it would be nice to break you up into smaller groups, and we can rotate and dive with the group so everyone has an opportunity to have us on hand during your dives. And I'm going to hand it over to Shane. And if you have any questions, just let me know.
Yeah. Hey guys, I'm Shane. I'll be doing the video portion of things. And as Ramona mentioned, it's a little bit separate, but at the same time, when we hit things like composition, things like that, you know, we'll be working together. A little bit about us. We love liveaboard diving. We've been doing it for years. So we're real excited to do this in a place like Cuba, where it's hard to take bad photos and bad videos, and where it's so protected and it doesn't have that you know, so much scuba traffic. So we've done a lot of years of Caribbean diving, and you know, it's exciting to, you know, the fact that we together, I think we have probably close to 40 years of experience doing this. And I think it's exciting to go somewhere in the Caribbean where you're not kind of disappointed from diving there 10 years ago, the way it looks now, you know, because they take such good care of it. So it's a special place, and we're really excited to shoot there. You know, as travelers and as workshops go, we're as fluid as the currents we're diving in. I think it's you know, everything is subject to change. You got to kind of roll with the punches, because you never know what the weather's going to do. You never know what level that everyone's at. So we're going to teach in ways that we try to make it fun for everybody. We don't like people to feel like they're obligated or sitting in a classroom setting and keep them there forever. Everybody likes to get their naps and get their free time. So I think one of the things I really like about workshop is the fact that we don't just learn these photo and video techniques and all these technical things, which is great. You know, we're all like-minded divers, and we learn from each other. So we learn different kind of, you know, diving hacks. You know, like here's a free one. If you didn't know, if you're on a liveaboard, you should definitely not rinse your wetsuit after every dive in the morning, because if you lay it out and it's still salty, that salt will allow your wetsuit to dry twice as fast. So the next dive you get on, it'll be that much more dry. So I'm giving that one out for free. We've been doing this professionally for a long time. We've done things, like I said, in the Caribbean. We've done it in a lot of different scenarios. We've worked with a lot of different networks and a lot of people, from the Cousteaus to Josh Gates. So we've learned a few things over the years, but we still, after this many years of doing it, there's
So much to learn.
Yeah,
still.
after every dive, we still kind of come up and go, wow, there's, you know, I could have done this, or I think the next dive I'm going to try to do this. So it's an ongoing process, and we learn so much from each other that you know, I think we should have a lot of fun from a video standpoint. You know, obviously we're going to talk about etiquette. You know, being in such a delicate place. You know, we'll talk about gear. We'll talk about gear prep. You know, I roll personally with a Sony FX3 and a Nauticam housing. I've got also a GH6 and an Ike housing. But I've got a lot of experience with Kraken housings for phones. A lot of people are doing that these days. GoPros, obviously. Insta360 is a pretty interesting way to shoot some underwater stuff these days. So I'll have that stuff on hand, and I'm fairly familiar with those things, but I'm happy to learn about, you know, any new gear that you guys are using beforehand, and we'll get to know you guys as we get closer to that time of departure, and we'll know what you're rolling with, and you know, we'll be well versed on things that we think you should have on hand. And you know, we'll also talk about post. I typically use Adobe Premiere. We can touch a little bit in DaVinci as well for some color correction. But if you're not big time into editing and storytelling these big epic videos, then, you know, I'll also go into, if you're shooting direct on your phone or putting some clips on your phone. A lot of people we know these days are trying to just do more, you know, their best clips and putting them up on social media. But even if you're just posting these clips on social media, you want to do it in a way where you're telling a story and where you're at, and you know how to pick the right ones and how to maybe edit them and color correct them on your phone. So there's a lot of things we can cover while we're there, and we're in a good place to do it. So I think we will, you know, as this evolves, we'll really optimize and try to have a program in place where we can all have a good time.
And back to the photography portion of it, I don't think I mentioned that I would be editing with Lightroom Classic. So I'll be showing you all tips and tricks on how to edit your photos if you're interested. And even maybe during image reviews, I could take a few of your photos and edit them in front of everyone, and so we can share the process together. So, and I'm shooting with a Canon 5D Mark IV and an Autocan housing.
You also have used Gates housings.
Yes.
What's the surf housing you use?
Oh gosh, the Aquatica.
Aquatica. Yeah. So that pretty much covers our end.
Great, awesome. Thanks, Shane. Thanks, Ramona. I think let's start our Q&A. I'm sure a lot of you have a lot of questions. Let's start it off with Cass. He had some really good questions in the chat. So Cass, you want to ask those questions, and I'm sure Kelly will be more than happy to answer them. Where's Cass? Oh, well, Cass is muted.
He does.
Oh, hi. Yeah, just a couple of questions. I was wondering, like I've gone to like Little Cayman for a week of diving. Great, you know, diving there. And since Cuba is so close, like is the diving there kind of comparable? Is it different? Is it that much different, or is it kind of similar in some cases?
I love this question. I just totally botched what I had open because I was going to show an image of a map, but I'll pull it up in a second. I'm not super good at multitasking, but the short answer is yes, it is definitely that much different. And it's for really like two primary reasons. The number one reason actually being the mangroves. Like I said, the mangroves actually play the fundamental role in creating this ecosystem that is the Gardens of the Queen. So first off, it's almost 90 miles of mangrove. And to put that into perspective, you are 60 miles off the coast of Cuba. It's almost 90 miles of mangrove like islands, and with, you know, sand and mangrove, sea flats, etc. And then you're 90 miles to Cayman. So what you have is not only a nursery for all of the big megafauna that utilize the mangroves, but the nutrients and things that come in and out of the mangroves actually are repairing the reef system and keeping the reef system healthy. One thing to maybe mention is think of hurricanes. If a hurricane blows over Cayman or somewhere else, it's going to take a long time, or for that to repair and rebuild. Whereas the nutrients are so rich in this particular area, again, back to the mangroves that are completely virgin. There's no structure, there's no people that live out there, and no one else is allowed out there except through the Avalon program. So it's extremely pristine. So it repairs itself twice as fast as other places in the Caribbean, generally speaking. Then when you couple that, like I said, with the fact we have a conservation program going on, where we are limiting the number of resources. We're limiting the number of divers that dive in any particular zone or fly fish in any particular zone, to make sure that it's regulated and taken care of properly. So the shark population alone, after your first dive or two, you'll be like, haha, she was right. Like, it's different.
Oh, and from a photo and video standpoint, Little Cayman is some amazing diving.
Yeah.
But there's definitely going to be a lot more opportunity for split shots in Cuba than you would have on that wall,
Yeah,
Wow.
especially with the mangroves, the crocodiles, things like that.
totally. So, okay. Yeah. Kaz, did you have any other questions?
Oh, yeah, I think it was answered in the chat, but yeah, I was just curious about like if there's, you know, in a group, like there's some, you know, LGBTQ divers, how would.
Very accepting. Actually, it's an extremely accepting culture of that in general. Yeah, I would say warm fuzzies and warm welcome all around. 100%. I also see you asked about Dan. I think that's a good question. Like any good diver, you should have dive accident insurance, period. Dive accident insurance to Cuba is unique because everything with Cuba is a little bit unique. But the bottom line is Dan Dive Accident Insurance is the only one that I can speak definitively on with this information, in saying that if you read their policy, they're going to tell you that they do not cover Cuba. But then in the fine print, they do cover Cuba, provided that you are traveling there for legal reasons, i.e. you are, and that they're going to do it through a reimbursement platform, typically through their European office. And that is just because of the embargo and how money is allowed to be transferred into Cuba. They can't actually pay Cuba for any services. They'll need to reimburse you directly after the fact. So I don't want to get too long-winded on that topic, but if you need more specifics, Dan can answer those questions. But bottom line is, I think everybody should have dive accident insurance. Dan is the one I would suggest starting with, and the hyperbaric chamber is in Havana, and we would get you there, period.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Cass also had a question about internet.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I had a whole bunch of questions.
No,
I like
mean,
it. These are good ones. And my answer is simple. There is none.
Okay.
Don't count on it. Don't expect it. You're not going to have it. You are also not going to have cell service. And bringing in satellite devices is illegal to bring them into Cuba. So if found there, you should expect they're going to confiscate it. I don't think they're going to throw you in jail or anything in Cuba, but they're going to take it and they're not going to let you enter with it. So you cannot bring satellite devices, and you need to put a really sweet out of office message on your email, and you'll see it when you get back, because you won't see it when you're out there.
Great. Thanks.
Rick had a question. How are the crocodile interactions managed?
Yeah, that's a great one. To be completely candid, it's definitely only snorkeling with the crocodile. And there's definitely an area that we go to that the crocodile knows to expect us, and they pull up and make a lot of noise, and the croc will normally come and he hangs out. They have typically some type of chicken or something that they'll kind of have there to keep his attention on that. And then they'll normally just regulate it with 1 to 2 at a time. We'll get in and you'll be able to kind of snorkel with him and around him. And he just hangs out. Typically he's pretty just go with the flow. He'll go to one side. He may swim over here, and you can get some really amazing shots above or by under him and coming at you, and vice versa. To as long as he doesn't,
How do you
go ahead.
stop? Uh,
How do we stop what?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's good. Larry, did you have a follow-up question?
No, I'm good. I'm sorry.
Okay. Oh, no, it's okay. Just want to make sure I wasn't missing you. Yeah, so effectively we have some chicken that if he's good and doesn't eat anybody else's leg, he gets his chicken leg at the end. And normally that's pretty motivating for him. So I think the chicken leg tastes better anyway. So but no, in all seriousness, it's a really cool experience. Even people that don't want to get in with him, you really get like an up close encounter with him, and it's cool. Like it's cool. So that's kind of how the crocodile interactions would be managed, but it's definitely only snorkeling, and it's typically kind of in this particular area so that it's more controlled and we know what to expect and they know what to expect. Sharks, somebody throw out another question, but I do want to mention, this is definitely, there are an abundance of sharks. So if sharks make you nervous, I still suggest you go. You will think of them as Labrador retrievers when you get done with the trip. But they are definitely like, they're everywhere, and they just kind of hang out with you for the whole dive. They're just around. And they do some silky, they take you to some areas where there's silkies. And the silkies are just really like kind of hanging under the boat, and you get some incredible shots of the sharks. You will be all done with shark photos by the time you are done with this trip. You will not need any more. Go ahead.
Kelly, George had a question whether the trip is considered research or educational.
The trip is, maybe I should touch on that actually. Let me just see. If you guys don't mind, I will just share my screen and kind of go to this other quick section here. Everybody can see my screen okay? As I mentioned, this is really a conservation program. There is research happening behind the scenes that has nothing to do with the Live Aboard program. And additionally, when you're there, you will have the opportunity to participate and do like species census. And if there's any ever like projects that are going on, of course, we would encourage participation. But some clients, if they're like done diving, for the week or something, and we have a group of people, we have non-divers, they can go and help pick up any trash or anything on the beach, report when they see any animals with any tags on them. There's definitely participation that we encourage the guests to be in as well. Additionally, during the week, you will always have a marine biologist that's out in the Gardens of the Queen with you for the week. Now, depending on what other programs are running that same week, they may not be on your mothership 24/7, but they will come to do presentations throughout the week, in the evenings or whatever, maybe after lunch, to go over specifics of the Gardens of the Queen in our program that way as well. So you're getting you are definitely getting education and conservation in this. Because of all of those things, taking a quick step back, the US allows for, I think it's 13 legal reasons to travel to Cuba. One of those reasons is humanitarian project. It's the Office of Foreign Assets and Controls, or OFAC, gave 13 allowable reasons if you want to go to Cuba, and tourism isn't one of them. But humanitarian projects is. And our program, very naturally, the itinerary that you follow with our program falls under this license. So the short story is, simply by being a part of the Avalon program, i.e. going on the Bluewater group trip, you qualify. Your time there is validated by this program. I am continuing to struggle with waking up my thing every time I do this. So as I mentioned before, you know, you going and doing this not only is your legal reason, but it is also how the conservation program sustains itself and where we get the funding and where we get the patrols to make sure that illegal fishing and other people coming into the gardens isn't happening. So this is a really like all encompassing, lots of things are happening behind the scenes to make this all come together. But the bottom line is all of that means that your legal reason for going is humanitarian project. As far as the US is concerned, the US is going to want to know why you're going to Cuba, and OFAC, general license humanitarian projects, is your reason. Does anybody have any other questions kind of on that topic? Because I also have some other documents I can show as well about entries and things like that, but I want to make sure, do we have any other questions that Tim that are in the chat?
Whether the visit to Havana is also considered humanitarian.
Perfect. Let me right into it. I didn't want to get long-winded on it. The short answer is yes, if it's really a day or so in order to make sure you get to the boat on time, because you're justifying your overnight in Havana or in Camagüey or whatever, because you want to make sure that you arrive for your humanitarian project week. If you start to stay in Cuba on the front end of the trip for a couple days, like 2 or 3, it starts to become more important that you make sure that your itinerary during those days is validated by another reason that is appropriate for that time spent.
100%.
That I'm not sure if that was a question or not, but that would be the support for the Cuban people. So support for the Cuban people is another reason. That's another general license that is an allowable reason. And so again, you can look these licenses up yourself, but you can go and familiarize yourself with what an itinerary should look like. I'm not sure if they're asking a question or not, but that way you can make sure that the time you spend on land is validated for that time. And then when you get on the boat, so in that sense, you're really like double covered. You've validated the time that you spend on land with supporting the Cuban people, and you've validated your time during the week aboard with humanitarian project. The reality is, though, one quick pro tip, don't get overwhelmed in all of that. It's easy to just stick with humanitarian project, because that's really should be your fundamental reason for going. You don't need to be giving all the explanations or reasons or clicking multiple boxes or whatever. Just stick with humanitarian project. It's only in the event that you come back into the US and they're just like, hey, you were there for like a couple extra days. What did you do? It's nice for you to be able to have a clear understanding on both perspectives of how you spent your time. Maybe on that note, that I should clarify at this point, there is not, you're not asking for permission to go to Cuba. These licenses are self-regulated general licenses. So it's really for you to understand why you're going and for you to give that particular reason when you come back in. You're not messaging or waiting for approval or anything of that nature. It's anybody could literally, you could book a flight today and go to Havana tomorrow, as long as you know what you're doing and why you're there when you come back. And tourism and drinking a bunch of mojitos cannot be the only reason. And so that, just to give that breakdown, just because I have the slide up next, this is what your Cuban tourist card would look like. It is literally just a blank pink card that you can either order in advance through the link that Bluewater will provide you. Please don't just Google Cuban tourist card. Just please utilize the links that your trip leader or host is providing you. But the bottom line is you're literally just ordering this card. You would select the OFAC category being humanitarian projects and fill out the information, and they would send it to you. And that card really has no value or identity, no clock on it until you actually put your name on it and arrive in Cuba. So they are, in a general sense, they're even transferable regardless of kind of what you fill out here when you purchase it. Because again, it doesn't really become credible until you are actually arriving in Cuba with it completed and they're stamping it to say you're there. So that's the one thing you would end up purchasing in order to go, is your tourist visa. But again, I just like to clarify that you're not asking for permission. Anybody can go and buy this visa. The other thing that you would do 48 hours before your travel. I know if anybody traveled to Hawaii during the pandemic, maybe it's still a thing now, you had to like fill out like a traveler information link right before your trip. Cuba has you do the same thing. It's called the D Viajeros form, and you cannot complete it until 48 hours prior. But again, these are the things that Bluewater would walk you through prior. But the pro tip, you only have to fill out the ovals that are red. And we have helpful documents to make sure that we guide you through how to answer those questions and things as you go. But those are the big things, just to, again, double validate, so that you are like, oh my gosh, I don't remember what she said. What was the reason? We give you this travel affidavit, which is just your document to print and fill out and check humanitarian projects, and then sign and date it and carry it with you during your travels, so that if you are asked when you're coming back in why you were in Cuba, you don't even have to remember. You can just pull it out and show them. And then that is just another way to kind of cover your basis, but it's really, it's just comfort for yourself. And we also will provide you, like I said, in the other slide, this certificate of participation and completion with an itinerary. So that you can validate, this is how I spent my days, this is what we did. We give you all that in a document that you can take with you. And it just takes the guesswork out for you. So you have it if you feel like you need it. Yeah.
Muted.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Tim, that came up in the chat?
I don't see any more questions. Does anyone have any more questions? You can unmute yourself and ask. Going once.
I see a question. Do you have future trips to Cuba?
We will probably have future trips to Cuba because we do love diving in Cuba. We don't have any planned currently as of yet, but if you keep checking back on our website, you should see one soon. Average prices, that is going to vary. You can always just send us an email to info@bluewaterdivetravel.com, and we'll get right back to you with with prices based on your dates, number of people and stuff like that, because it will change based on when you want to go and the number of people you're going with. Do we have any more questions? Can you use US dollars there? Unfortunately, you cannot use US dollars. You will. Oh, you can.
Well, yeah. This is as I think they were touching on it. You have to be flexible with Cuba. Please, don't go on this trip if you cannot roll with a last minute change. But yes, for Cuba, US dollar, well, cash is the only method of payment for US. Cuba will not take US credit cards. Now, as far as cash, the Cuban people actually will happily accept USD or Euro. And I don't know that really either is fine. They don't have a strong preference, but for us, it's just easier to have USD. And that works because remember, when we're there, we are supporting the Cuban people. So if you are able to pay in USD cash, that's a little bit more reassuring that it's actually going to the Cuban people and not to the Cuban government. That means that you're eating in private restaurant, like privately owned restaurants, and you're tipping the musicians on the street, you're paying an artist for their work that they did, you know, those types of things. But basically, you'll be able to pay for almost anything that you would do in Cuba, generally speaking, in USD, though I do think it is nice to have a little bit of euro with you if you are going to spend a few days on the front end of the trip, because there are some places where like rum purchases and cigars, they're going to want, they might be government owned, depending on which one you go to, and you just don't want to be in a position where they need to take euro and you only had USD cash. But it's really for those specific purchases, and it's not always the case. But just as recently as I want to say like January of this year, they even accept USD at the airports now, USD cash at most of the airports. So you can definitely pay with USD cash, generally speaking, but you cannot use credit cards. So you'll need to come with the cash that you expect to need.
So a lot of small bills.
A lot of small bills, because change is hard to come by. And just a rule of thumb for our program in general, because again, it's Cuba and everything is just that notch different. Everything must be paid in advance. So if you are going to do any nitrox or pay for some extra dives or have any rental gear, set up your train, you know, we want to make sure we know where we need to pick you up. All of that needs to be paid in advance. There is nothing paid on board. We do not have a boutique with any clothes. It's the saddest news I'll give you all day, is that there's no like shirts or anything to purchase. There's nothing that you're going to buy as part of the Avalon program when you get there. The only exception is at the end of the trip when you pay the gratuity or tip to the crew. That must be paid in cash, in USD or euro. But otherwise, the rule of thumb is everything is paid in advance.
We have another question about vaccinations required.
There are none required. If you have a vaccination, in my documents, I say you can bring your vaccination card just to validate that you have it, but there is no vaccination or testing requirements for COVID.
I think the question was about general vaccinations.
Oh,
yeah.
No,
I think so.
None. Nothing's required. Even I would have to look at what is recommended for that particular area. So I'm not sure.
Okay.
I didn't get, if there was, I didn't get any. Let's put it that way.
Do we have any more questions, anyone?
I'm actually going to go way back to Kaz's question in regards to the satellite phones. So does that mean that the Avalon fleets don't have a satellite phone in case of emergencies?
No, we definitely, no, yes. And we have a radio. There's a radio. There's definitely, you're not like gone. They're not going to have to like drive the boat back to call in for an emergency. No, they do have, the boat itself will have communications, but
is it ever possible for any of the guests to use it if it's like for a fee?
No.
Okay.
Is the short answer. Now, in the event of an emergency, again, we're gonna act as needed, but and vice versa. There will be there's emergency contact information for clients that are their family members or people here in the US. They will be able to contact, I am one of them, that they would actually contact me or our reservations manager and let us know that there's an emergency, and we will get the message out to them. But it is important to note that outside of kind of really ailments and true like life-threatening emergencies, it is very expensive, and you don't just jog back over to port. You are out there for the week, and it would take a extreme circumstance for us to need to get you back. Now we would do it and you'd be back lickety split depending on the circumstance. via helicopter or whatever the case needs to be. But generally speaking, I just like to set the precedent. You are out there.
Nature, one with nature.
Yes, one with nature.
A true vacation.
Just a few other of your friends.
Love it.
Let's see. Do you know what the Garmin InReach is, Kelly?
Say that again.
Garmin InReach.
That's the
Is that another satellite?
I am aware of it and I have seen it in use. I should not comment any further on that in this public platform. My reply is that if it is illegal to bring in satellite devices, and that is considered a satellite device, though they can confiscate it if they see that you have it. That is my reply.
And I suppose it'd be the same with the Nautilus Lifeline.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
It has satellite in its taglines of bullet points of its specs. It is.
That makes sense. Be on the safe side with all your satellite devices. Just
Yeah.
leave them alone. Let's see. Do we have any more questions? If not, I think we will end this talk. Going once, going twice. Done. All right, great. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us.
There's a question.
Oh, we have a question.
What about the current?
Oh, current?
Current.
Oh,
I didn't see it. I didn't see
It
it.
just popped up.
Current. You mean like current diving? Is that what the question was? Like, is there current?
Yeah.
No, generally
Yeah.
speaking, I do see a few other questions in here too. I can just hit on them really quick. Bottom line is there are going to be some dives with very mild current, but this is not Cozumel. You're not like ripping through current. I see a question about any limit on the amount of money you can carry in. I really don't have the specific answer on that. You would probably need to do some research on that specifically. I don't know the answer. I don't want to speak wrong. I see a question here kind of about foreign passports. I just want to clarify, I mentioned the pink tourist card. That is if you are flying in, if you are a US citizen and flying in and out of the US, or like back in and out of the US. If you are going to Cuba through another country, you will actually need a green tourist card. Again, this information is all in the documents, but just there actually is a difference between what country your actually last port of entry and exit are when coming and going into Cuba. The form, please bring it with you, Bluewater. I think that was it. Just a visit, humanitarian. Good. I think we got most of them. So yeah.
great.
Bluewater is there to be your resource, and they will be able to answer most of it. But if not, I'm always available to them to make sure we get you the information that you need. But I just got back like 3.5 weeks ago from my last trip, and I am sad I'm here, not there. Wonderful. If you guys can't make it with Bluewater on this particular October trip, you call them up and tell them when you do want to go, and they will make it happen.
Exactly.
I certainly hope you guys will join us. We're really excited about this.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. And this recording will be available to be seen online, right, Nirupam?
Yeah, it's on Facebook Live. So if you go to our Facebook page, you'll see it right in our newsfeed.
Great, awesome. Again, thanks everyone for coming, and keep an eye out on Facebook, and we will have for our next travel talk schedule. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Thanks.
You guys.
Bye.